Did you just say she's the defense attorney? The officer's voice carries through the courtroom like a sneer wrapped in authority. The bailiff's eyes flicker toward him, uncertain whether to hush him or let it slide. You stand at the defense table, file in hand, suit pressed but shoulders stiff from the weight of that tone, the kind that says you don't belong here, no matter how many degrees hang on your wall. Fluorescent lights hum overhead, flattening every face in the room to the same washed-out shade of judgment. The air smells faintly of stale coffee and floor wax. He's leaning against the witness stand, badge gleaming under the overhead lights, his smirk just wide enough for the jury to see. "Objection, counselor," he says mockingly, one eyebrow raised. "Or is it counselorette?" A few quiet chuckles ripple from the gallery, low, nervous sounds that sting worse than laughter. You don't flinch. You flip a page in your legal pad, letting the paper's soft crack echo louder than any response. The judge exhales through his nose, a warning glance meant to restore order but not dignity. That, apparently, is yours to protect alone. "Proceed, Miss Daniels," the judge finally says, voice heavy with forced neutrality. "Your voice doesn't tremble." "Thank you, Your Honor." The officer, Sergeant Blake, leans forward on the stand, his arms crossed, the picture of smug confidence. You catch the faint glint of his nameplate and the thin gold ring on his hand. A married man, proud father of 2, he mentioned in pre-trial. You imagine his kids watching the replay of this hearing one day, wondering why their father smirked at a woman trying to do her job. "Sergeant," you begin, tone steady. "You testified that the suspect resisted arrest. Can you clarify what you mean by resisted?" He chuckles, glancing at the prosecutor. "Counselor, maybe where you're from, running is polite. But when a man bolts after you say freeze, that's resistance." You let his words hang there. A few jurors exchange looks. Somewhere in the back, someone coughs. You glance at the transcript clerk, who's still typing, the keys clattering like distant rain. "Did you mention," you ask, "that the suspect was unarmed?" Blake smirks again. "I mentioned he looked like he could be armed." You don't wait to find out. That's when the courtroom goes still. Because it's not just a statement. It's a confession wrapped in bravado. You feel a flicker of heat rise beneath your collar, but force your face into calm, the kind your grandmother taught you. Quiet power. "So you acted on what you thought might be true," you say softly. "Not what was." The prosecutor objects, his voice a clean blade. "Argumentative, Your Honor." "Sustained," the judge replies, almost relieved to interrupt. You nod once, lips pressed. No further questions at this time. When you return to your seat, the defendant, a young black man with wrists still red from cuffs, whispers, "You're good." His voice carries both hope and disbelief. Like he's never seen someone who looks like him command this space without being escorted out of it. Across the aisle, Blake whispers something to the prosecutor. They both laugh, too loudly, too casually for a courtroom. You catch the phrase diversity hire drift across the still air like a fly. Your fingers tighten around your pen until the cap cracks. This is the part they never show on TV, the humiliation that doesn't come from losing a case, but from realizing how few people here actually expect you to win one. Still, you remember what your mentor once told you. Never let them see you bleed where they cut you. So you breathe in, jot a small note, body cam footage, check timestamps, and lift your chin. The judge calls for a recess. The gavel hits wood. Conversations burst like static. You gather your files, each page a small armor plate against a system that still pretends to be colorblind while squinting at your skin. Blake brushes past as he exits the stand, his voice low, meant only for you. "You're smart, Miss Daniels, but you should learn your place. Courtrooms ain't built for heroes." You smile without looking up. "Neither were handcuffs, Sergeant." The look on his face, a brief flicker of surprise, is the first crack in his mask. As the door shuts behind him, you catch your reflection in the courtroom glass. You look tired, yes? But there's something else there too. Not fear, not yet. Just the quiet readiness of someone who knows truth is heavier than pride, but worth carrying anyway. The janitor begins sweeping near the jury box, humming softly to himself. You pause, listening to the sound, realizing how many people in this building do their jobs unseen, how many truths get cleaned away before morning. Outside, thunder rumbles faintly over the city. Rain slicks the courthouse steps, and in the window's reflection, lightning splits the skyline. Somewhere beneath the fluorescent glare and the echo of laughter, a thought roots itself deep. He lied. And I'll prove it. Because in this courtroom, this fragile theater of power, the only weapon sharper than a badge is the truth spoken by someone they underestimated. The hallway hums like a hive during recess, heels clicking, papers rustling, phones buzzing. You move through the crowd with your briefcase in one hand, coffee cooling in the other, heart steady despite the sting still fresh in your chest. Laughter trails you from behind, a thin, poisonous thread you can't quite ignore. The affirmative action lawyer strikes again, someone says, voice dripping with false humor. You don't turn. You don't need to. You already know it's Sergeant Blake, voice carrying that same lazy arrogance that hides behind uniforms and smirks. Beside him, Assistant District Attorney Markson grins, pretending it's just locker room talk. Two men in expensive suits, laughing at your expense while the vending machine hums beside them like an indifferent witness. Blake leans closer to Markson and mutters, "Guess they'll let anyone pass the bar these days." Markson snorts. "Maybe they just lower it. You stop walking. Just long enough for them to feel your silence. The kind that turns air into glass. Then you turn your head just slightly enough for your eyes to catch his reflection in the metal vending panel. He blinks. "Careful, Sergeant," you say without facing him. The bar's the only thing between you and perjury. The hallway falls quiet. Markson pretends to check his phone. Blake scoffs, louder than he feels. "Just making conversation, counselor." "Of course," you reply softly. You seem to talk best when you shouldn't. The elevator doors open, saving everyone from what could have been your first public explosion. You step inside, spine straight, breath even. The doors close on their smirks. Inside the elevator, you finally exhale. The mirrored walls throw your image back at you, every angle of composure holding together with sheer will. You press the ground floor button with more force than necessary. For a second, your reflection almost laughs at you. This again? It's not the first time a courtroom turned into a stage for mockery. It won't be the last, but it still burns. Every time. The quiet racism dressed in banter, the colleagues who look away instead of speaking up. The microaggressions that never make the news but bleed all the same. When you reach the lobby, you catch a glimpse of the defendant's mother sitting by the window, her hands clasped, her lips moving in silent prayer. Her son's life, her whole world, depends on whether people like you can stay calm in the face of humiliation. That thought steadies you. You offer her a small nod. She gives you a trembling smile, eyes glistening. "Ms. Daniels," a voice calls from behind. It's Terrence, your paralegal. Mid-20s, wiry, and always in sneakers that squeak just a bit too loud for courthouse marble. He jogs up with a folder in hand. "I got the discovery request back from the precinct, but there's something weird." You open the folder as you walk toward the coffee kiosk. Inside, bodycam logs, timestamps, evidence lists. But one thing stands out, a 14-minute gap labeled technical glitch. Your coffee goes cold instantly. 14 minutes? You say? "Yeah," Terrence replies, lowering his voice. "Right after the suspect was cuffed. Then it starts again when they're already in the cruiser. No officer report about it either. You feel your pulse sharpen? Make copies, multiple, and put the originals in the lockbox." Terrence nods, already jogging off. You stir your coffee absently, lost in thought. A glitch in police bodycam footage isn't unheard of, but it's rarely innocent. There's a legal precedent, one you learned in your third year. Missing video equals missing truth. Courts often rule that such gaps can imply evidence tampering if intent is proven. You look out through the courthouse glass as rain streaks down the city beyond. Blake steps outside, shaking hands with a reporter. He smiles for the camera like he owns the building. His badge glints in the gray light. That little piece of metal carrying decades of unchallenged authority. You sip your coffee and murmur to yourself, "Let's see what those 14 minutes are hiding." A security guard, an older man with kind eyes, overhears and chuckles. "Careful, counselor." That look in your eyes, I've seen it before. It's the I'm about to ruin someone's career look. You laugh quietly. Not ruin, Mr. Ellis, just balance the scales a bit. He nods knowingly. Then sharpen your pencil, ma'am. Those scales have been tilted too long. Back in the courtroom, the mood has shifted. The jury files in, quiet and tense. Blake returns to the stand, chin higher, eyes avoiding yours. Maybe he's wondering what you overheard in that hallway. Maybe he's starting to realize you're not the type to back down quietly. You rise as the judge enters. Gavel. Silence. The prosecutor continues direct examination, trying to smooth over the inconsistencies you spotted earlier. But your mind is already tracing those missing 14 minutes, looping through possibilities. You tap your pen softly, rhythm matching your heartbeat. When it's your turn for cross, you approach slowly, every step measured. Sergeant, you begin, do you recall any equipment malfunctions during the arrest? He frowns, eyes darting briefly toward the prosecutor. Not that I remember. You tilt your head. So your body cam recorded continuously? That's right. Would you swear to that? The question lands heavily. The prosecutor tenses. The jury looks up. Blake clears his throat. To the best of my recollection, yes. Understood. You smile faintly. Because recollection has a funny way of skipping the inconvenient parts, doesn't it? The judge clears his throat. Ms. Daniels, withdrawn, Your Honor. You step back, calm. No further questions. For now. As you return to your seat, Terrence slides you a sticky note. Clerk says precinct sent an incomplete file. You glance up. Blake is staring straight ahead, but his jaw tightens. The first domino just wobbled. You lean back, heart racing beneath your calm facade. Somewhere in those 14 minutes, buried behind bureaucracy and arrogance, lies the crack in his perfect story, and you plan to pry it open until the whole truth falls out. You spend the night at your desk, courthouse echoes still ringing in your ears, the shuffle of suits, the scrape of chairs, the small, self-satisfied laugh of a man too used to getting away with it. The office is quiet now, the hum of the AC blending with the steady tap of your keyboard. One lamp burns above the stack of files you've read twice already, the light casting your tired reflection across the glass window. The digital clock on the wall reads 2:43 a.m. The city outside is a smear of orange lights and steady rain. You glance at your empty takeout box, cold lo mein uneaten, and sigh. The technical glitch. 14 minutes that could decide whether an innocent man goes to prison or walks free. You know how rare it is for a defense attorney to even get a copy of raw body cam data. The police usually control the chain of custody, and once something's marked lost, it might as well be buried under concrete. You pick up your phone and call Terrence. He answers groggily. Terrence, it's me. Ms. Daniels. It's like 3. Get up. We're checking metadata. He groans, but within 20 minutes, he's beside you, hoodie over his pajamas, laptop open. You slide him the USB copy. See if there's anything in the file's creation timestamps. If someone trimmed that footage, the digital signature won't match the report log. He grins, rubbing his eyes. You're thinking like a hacker again. You smirk. No, like someone who's been lied to before. Minutes pass in silence. The only sounds are keys clacking, hard rain on glass, and the low murmur of a jazz station playing from your speaker. Soft trumpet notes, bending like weary sighs. At 3:26 a.m., Terrence freezes. Got it. He swivels the laptop around. Look, the file says last modified 2 days after the arrest. And here, the footage length and the metadata. 1 hour, 12 minutes. But the precinct's version cuts off at 58. 14 minutes missing, you whisper. Exactly. You sit back, eyes narrowing. So someone deleted part of the file after it was logged into evidence, which means tampering. Terrence finishes, excitement cracking through his exhaustion. You nod slowly. And if we can prove who did it, that's perjury and obstruction. Minimum, he grins. You think it's Blake? I think it's someone who knows how to lie with confidence, you reply, and he's the only one smiling that much. The clock ticks to 4 a.m. You lean forward, elbows on your knees. There's a moment of quiet, the kind that feels like both victory and dread. You know, this isn't just a career move. This is the kind of discovery that can make or end a lawyer. People still argue whether young attorneys should ever challenge law enforcement in open court. Some say it's professional suicide, others call it a moral duty. You've never been great at picking the safe side of that argument. When the sun rises, your eyes sting from the light. You head home for a quick shower, staring at yourself in the bathroom mirror, curls damp, eyes ringed with determination. Somewhere behind those eyes, the little girl from the South Side still whispers, "Don't let them decide who you are." By the time you return to the courthouse, the hallway hums again. Blake's already there, in full uniform, badge gleaming, chatting with a local reporter. His laugh is too loud, too sure. You watch him from the end of the corridor, a storm beneath calm skin. The judge calls everyone to reconvene. As you take your seat, the prosecutor leans over. "You look tired, counselor." You smile without warmth. "Tired is fine. Dishonest isn't." He raises an eyebrow. "You planning something?" "Always, you say. When your turn comes, you stand." "Your Honor, the defense requests to reopen cross-examination." The prosecutor immediately objects. "On what grounds?" You slide the printed metadata sheet across the table. "On the grounds that newly obtained evidence shows discrepancies in the police bodycam footage provided to the court." The judge frowns. "Explain." The bodycam file was edited after submission. 14 minutes of footage are missing. The officer's report makes no mention of any malfunction, yet digital records show tampering occurred 2 days after the arrest. "We request that the court subpoena the precinct server for the original file." The courtroom murmurs. Reporters scribbling, jurors glancing at one another. Blake's jaw tightens. "That's absurd. You're accusing the department of—" "I'm accusing no one," you interrupt, voice calm but cutting. "I'm presenting facts." The judge raises a hand for silence. "Sergeant, do you have an explanation for this discrepancy?" Blake clears his throat. "I'm sure it's a clerical error. Our IT department—" "Would you be willing to have your device examined by an independent forensics team?" you ask gently. His pause is long enough for the jury to notice. "Your Honor," the prosecutor cuts in quickly. "This is unnecessary theatrics." The judge sighs, rubbing his temples. "Counsel, I'll review the motion." "We'll reconvene tomorrow morning." The gavel falls. The courtroom buzzes. Blake exits fast, shoulders tight. You gather your files slowly. The janitor hums again, sweeping near the benches. "Seems like the storm's about to hit," he mutters. You glance toward the door Blake just disappeared through. "Let it rain," you reply. Later that night, you sit by your office window again, city lights flickering below. You replay every word from the day, every look, every smirk. The system's not built for truth to win easily, but cracks are forming. You can feel it, somewhere between the rain and the silence. You open your laptop and whisper to the empty room. Tomorrow, we find out who the court really serves, justice or pride, and beneath that quiet vow, thunder rolls once more. Long before you ever stood in a courtroom, you stood on a cracked porch on Chicago's South Side, clutching your mother's hand as sirens wailed somewhere down the block. You were 9, maybe 10, watching your mom argue gently with the landlord about the heat that never worked. The man leaned against his car, cigarette dangling, eyes glazed with indifference. "Maybe if you paid on time, Miss Daniels," he muttered. Your mother didn't flinch. She held her chin high and said, "Maybe if you did your job, Mr. Latham." Then she turned to you, her smile soft but firm. "Baby, listen. Never let anyone's job title scare you out of speaking truth." That sentence would become a kind of rhythm in your life, like a heartbeat you'd hear years later in every courtroom where people mistook calm for weakness. After he drove away, your mom led you inside the apartment, the air cold but smelling faintly of lemon polish and strength. "Now," she said, lighting a small candle in the kitchen, "let's make some warmth of our own." It was the same tone she used every night before heading to her second job cleaning law offices downtown. You'd wait up, pretending to do homework but secretly reading the thick legal pads she brought home from work, pages filled with neat handwriting and arguments that sounded like puzzles with missing pieces. You didn't understand half of it then, but you loved how they felt powerful, even when written in blue ink on yellow paper. By high school, You were already working part-time, saving money, pushing grades like they were lifelines. Teachers told you, you're bright, but law school's expensive. You smiled. So is ignorance. There was one person who saw the fire before you did, Mr. Holloway, your debate coach. He was an older man with wire-rimmed glasses and the voice of someone who'd seen too much injustice to still care about politeness. One day after practice, he handed you a book, Thurgood Marshall's Arguments Before the Supreme Court. You want to change things? He said. Start with knowing how power sounds when it tells the truth. You read that book like scripture. Every word felt like a blade sharpened by experience. Years later, after your mom passed from exhaustion more than illness, you stood at her graveside, clutching the same book. It rained that day, too. The preacher spoke of rest, but all you could think of was how your mother never got to rest enough. You whispered to her tombstone, "I'll finish the fights you couldn't start." Then came law school. Nights spent surrounded by students who spoke like they owned the world and professors who looked at you like a diversity checkbox. You learned quickly that confidence was a dialect of survival. Once, during a mock trial, a classmate named Carter laughed when you objected to a procedural error. "Cute," he'd said, grinning. "She even sounds like a real lawyer." You'd smiled back, slow and deliberate. "And you even sound like a real mistake." The room had gone quiet. That was the first time you saw fear mix with respect in someone's eyes. When you graduated, you framed 2 photos on your desk, one of your mother cleaning an office at midnight, the other of you in your cap and gown. Beneath them, you kept a sticky note in her handwriting. "Truth doesn't need volume, just proof." You carried that sentence into every courtroom, every interrogation, every case where people doubted your voice because they couldn't ignore your skin. Fast forward to now, sitting in your dimly lit apartment, the same sticky note still taped to your laptop. You read it again while sipping reheated coffee. The world outside feels heavier, but the lesson stays light, steady, unwavering. A voicemail pings on your phone. It's Holloway. "Kid, saw the news. That cop you're crossing, Blake, right? Don't let him bait you. Men like that have been lying since they learned how to write reports." But truth's patient. It doesn't blink. You smile softly. "Yes, sir," you whisper to no one. The next morning, as you walk into court, something feels different. Not just resolve and ancestry. Generations of people who weren't allowed to speak in rooms like this, standing with you invisibly, quietly daring the walls to listen. Blake's already seated, chatting with a reporter again. The prosecutor avoids your gaze. The air buzzes with tension that smells faintly of coffee and control. You take your place at the defense table, smooth your blazer, and whisper to your client. "Stay calm. The truth's about to start talking." The judge enters. "Ms. Daniels, you may proceed." Your heels click once against the floor as you rise. The courtroom seems smaller today, almost intimate, like the whole city's watching through invisible glass. You open your notes, every margin filled with arrows, timestamps, fragments of thought. At the top, one sentence in your mother's handwriting, copied years ago. "Never let anyone's job title scare you out of speaking truth." You take a slow breath and meet Blake's gaze across the courtroom. He smirks, that same dismissive curve of the mouth that's followed you since day one. But this time, you smile back, calm, steady, dangerous, because you're not that little girl on the porch anymore. You're the woman who learned how to light warmth out of cold, and you've got proof. The courtroom feels colder the next morning, though maybe it's not the air. Maybe it's the tension sharpening every breath. You sit with your files neatly stacked, waiting for the moment that will either break you or make the truth echo beyond these walls. Judge Everett adjusts her glasses, her expression unreadable. "Counselor Daniels," she says, "you may cross-examine the witness." You rise, smooth your blazer, and take a measured step forward. "Officer Blake," you begin, voice low but steady. "You testified that you witnessed my client holding the weapon, correct?" Blake leans back in the witness chair, fingers laced smugly. "That's right," he says. "I saw it with my own eyes." The courtroom is silent except for the faint hum of fluorescent lights. You tilt your head. "And you're sure about that?" He chuckles, The kind of laugh that carries privilege like perfume. Yes, counselor. I've been doing this for 15 years. I know what I saw. There it is. The arrogance, thick as the starch in his uniform. You glance at the jury, their faces neutral but curious. Then you return your gaze to Blake. 15 years, you repeat. That's a long time to practice seeing what you want to see. The prosecutor starts to object, but you lift a hand, calm, controlled. Withdrawn. Let's stick to facts. You gesture to the monitor as a technician cues up bodycam footage. The screen flickers, showing a chaotic scene. Flashing red-blue lights, shouting, confusion. Blake's voice dominates the audio, barking orders. Then comes the key moment, the split second he claimed to see your client with a gun. You play it twice, then a third time slower. The room leans forward. Officer, you say softly, can you point to the exact frame where the weapon appears in your footage? Blake hesitates. It's right there. He points vaguely. You zoom in. The pixelated image shows nothing. Just a blur of hands, a flashlight, and a bystander's phone glinting under streetlight. Could it be, you ask, voice tightening, that what you saw wasn't a gun, but a reflection? His jaw tightens. No, I know what I saw. You step closer, one deliberate inch at a time, until your reflection merges with his on the screen. Then why, you whisper, did the timestamp on this footage change from 21:04:12 to 21:04:29 right before that moment? A murmur ripples through the courtroom. Blake blinks. I don't know what you're talking about. Oh, but you do. You lift a document. This is the unedited version, obtained directly from the precinct's digital evidence system. The footage you submitted to the court was cropped. 13 seconds missing. 13 seconds where a bystander shouted, "He dropped his phone!" The judge leans forward. Officer Blake, is this accurate? Blake's mouth opens, then closes. It must have been a technical— You interrupt, polite but firm. A technical error that conveniently erased exculpatory evidence? That's a rare coincidence. The jury watches, eyes wide. Even the prosecutor shifts uncomfortably. You continue, pacing slowly. Let me ask you something, officer. Do you remember a woman named Sandra Coates? He frowns. No. She filed a complaint 3 years ago. Said an officer falsified a report after mistaking her cell phone for a firearm. That complaint disappeared from the database after she moved out of state. Blake's face drains of color. The silence stretches. Heavy. Pulsing. Real. You lean in slightly. Voice soft enough that only the jury hears the intimacy of your certainty. Seems like your memory suffers from the same glitch as your camera. There's laughter. Quick. Nervous, from the back row. Even the judge hides a smirk before clearing her throat. Order, she says, tapping the gavel once. You turn back to your table, hands steady now. Your client stares at you, hope flickering for the first time in weeks. When the recess is called, you step outside. The hallway hums with whispers. A young intern from the prosecutor's office walks by and mutters, "Damn, that was surgical." You smile faintly. Truth usually is. As you head to the restroom, your phone buzzes. A text from Holloway. You're cooking him alive. But stay classy, not crispy. You laugh under your breath, the tension briefly breaking. Inside the mirror, you study your reflection. The fluorescent light hits just right, catching the steel in your eyes. Truth doesn't need volume, just proof, you whisper, touching the sticky note tucked into your briefcase. Back in the courtroom, Blake sits stiffly, whispering to his lawyer. You can almost hear the panic beneath his whisper, the sound of control slipping. The prosecutor stands, asking the judge for time to review the new evidence. You let them. You've already done your part, planted the seed of doubt so deep it's already blooming in the juror's eyes. As the court adjourns, a reporter approaches you outside. Ms. Daniels, did you expect to find tampered footage? You give a small, knowing smile. When people lie, their stories always skip a few seconds, the crowd murmurs. Someone claps once before the sound is swallowed by city noise. That night you drive home under the soft rain again. Same rhythm, same soundtrack of justice, taking the long way home. You park, lean your head back and exhale. People still argue whether the law is about winning or proving. You've learned it's neither. It's about making the truth undeniable, even to those who refuse to see it. And tomorrow, when the court resumes, you'll finish what you started. Because the truth, as your mother said, doesn't need volume. It just needs to breathe. The next morning, sunlight slices through the courthouse windows like interrogation lights. Everything gleams. The marble floors, the silver frames of the flags, the lenses of reporters' cameras waiting for round 2. The world smells faintly of nerves and coffee. You walk in early, calm but wired. Every step echoes through the hallway. Even your heels seem to announce, today, the truth fights back. Blake arrives 15 minutes late, looking like a man who barely slept. His once perfect uniform is wrinkled. The swagger's dimmed. You can see it in the way he adjusts his collar, trying to reassemble authority from fabric and memory. The prosecutor, Ms. Renner, greets you with tight politeness. "Counselor," she says, "we reviewed your claim overnight. If the footage was altered, that will be handled internally. It doesn't mean the entire case collapses." You nod slightly. "Of course not," you reply. "It just means justice starts breathing again." The bailiff calls the court to order. Judge Everett's gaze sweeps the room like a scalpel. "We'll resume where we left off. Ms. Daniels, continue your cross-examination." You rise, slow, deliberate, every move composed like a ritual. "Officer Blake," you begin, "you testified that you followed protocol during the arrest, correct?" "Yes." His voice is rough, defensive, and protocol requires that every officer maintain a continuous recording of the encounter, uninterrupted, unedited, and preserved under chain of custody. He shifts. "Yes." You slide a folder across the bench. "Then perhaps you can explain why the metadata from your device shows manual interference at 21:04:17, precisely when the video jumps," Renner objects. "Speculative," you smile faintly. "Not speculation, Your Honor. Forensics. The device log was verified by the precinct's own IT division this morning." The judge leans forward. "Overruled. Continue." Blake's throat tightens. "That's not possible." "Not possible," you echo softly. "That's what every liar says right before technology disagrees." A ripple of laughter rises, quickly stifled by the gavel's rap. You pace gently, letting silence do what words can't. "Officer Blake, would you agree that tampering with evidence in a criminal investigation is a federal offense?" He hesitates. "Yes." "And that knowingly providing false testimony under oath could result in perjury charges?" "Yes." You stop, turn, let your voice drop just a notch. "Then perhaps you'd like to correct your statement before we proceed," his lawyer whispers frantically. Blake stares straight ahead, jaw clenching. I may have reviewed the footage before submitting it, but I didn't alter it." "Reviewed?" You repeat. Interesting choice of words. You pull out another document. "Because the review software logs show your login credentials use the trim function twice on that file." The courtroom gasps softly. Blake's composure fractures. Sweat beads along his temple. "I was told to—" He stops himself, realizing too late that silence is no longer safe. "By whom?" You ask quietly. He doesn't answer. "By whom, officer?" The tension is electric. Even the judge leans forward. He stammers, I can't say without counsel." The judge nods. "Then you'll be excused for now. We'll reconvene after recess." The gavel falls like a verdict disguised as procedure. Outside, the courthouse steps buzz with reporters. Someone shouts, "Ms. Daniels, did you just imply systemic tampering?" You pause mid-step, look out over the sea of microphones. "I didn't imply anything," you say calmly. The evidence spoke for itself. Then quieter, almost to yourself. "People always think silence hides the truth. But sometimes, silence reveals who's afraid of it." You keep walking, ignoring the flashbulbs. Inside the cafe across the street, you sip your first decent coffee of the week. The barista, young, nervous, eyes shining, leans closer. "You're her, right? The lawyer who stood up to the cop?" You nod, smiling faintly. He grins. "My mom watched you on livestream. Said you reminded her of Thurgood Marshall." You laugh softly. "That's a big compliment." She said, "That woman's not loud, but she's dangerous." You raise your cup. Your mom sounds smart. Back in court after recess, Blake's seat is empty. The prosecutor looks uneasy, her file open but untouched. Judge Everett sighs. It seems the witness has been temporarily relieved of duty pending investigation. A murmur spreads through the room. You stand, expression neutral but satisfaction simmering beneath restraint. Your Honor, you say, given the new circumstances, the defense requests dismissal of all charges against my client. The judge nods slowly. Motion under consideration. I'll review the evidence personally. As you sit, your client whispers, You really think she'll drop it? You whisper back, I think she'll see it. That's all I ever needed. Across the aisle, Renner exhales sharply, as though realizing her case is collapsing in real time. She glances at you, not with anger, but something closer to respect. You were right, she says under her breath. Truth's patient. You smile, remembering Holloway's voice saying the same thing. And punctual, you reply softly, as the court adjourns. You glance back at the empty witness stand. The ghost of authority that once sneered, now replaced by the quiet dignity of exposure. Outside, the city hums again. People still hurry to lunch meetings and phone calls, unaware that inside one courtroom, history just tilted a few inches closer to balance. And maybe that's how justice really moves, not in thunderclaps or headlines, but in those steady, undeniable inches toward light. The storm breaks before dawn, not outside but inside the courthouse walls. News travels faster than truth ever could. By the time you walk into the building, the headlines are already everywhere. Bodycam footage altered in felony case. Officer under investigation. Blake's face fills the morning news screens, his expression frozen between arrogance and disbelief. They replay snippets of your cross-examination like courtroom cinema. Seems your memory suffers from the same glitch as your camera. You hadn't meant it to sound like a tagline, but people love poetic justice with bite. When you reach the courtroom, something feels different, quieter. Even the bailiff nods at you, not the stiff, obligatory kind of nod, but one carrying reluctant respect. Judge Everett's robe sways as she enters, her tone firm. We'll resume proceedings. Ms. Daniels, I've reviewed the unedited footage and the metadata evidence. It confirms the inconsistencies you cited. There's a murmur from the gallery, reporters, students, public defenders, everyday citizens drawn by rumor of a lawyer who made a uniform tremble. Therefore, the judge continues, this court is moving toward dismissal unless the prosecution can provide material rebuttal. Renner stands, palms flat on the table. Your Honor, the department has opened an internal investigation. I can't proceed until that concludes, Judge Everett nods. Then I see no reason to keep an innocent man in custody. Her gavel strikes once. Case dismissed, silence. Then an exhale of disbelief ripples through the courtroom. Your client covers his face with shaking hands. You stand motionless for a moment, the words case dismissed echoing like a hymn you've waited your whole life to hear. It isn't triumph you feel. Not really. It's relief. The kind that hums deep in the bones, quiet and clean. Blake isn't here to see it, but his absence speaks louder than any defense he could have offered. Afterward, you walk your client outside. The rain's stopped, the pavement shining like glass. He looks at you with tears in his eyes. They were never going to believe me. Not until you spoke up. You shake your head gently. They believed the truth. I just gave it a microphone, he laughs through his tears. You're something else, Miss Daniels, you smile. My mother would have liked to hear that. A crowd's gathered by the courthouse steps now. Reporters, activists, curious strangers. Microphones flash like lightning. You raise your hand once. No comments, you start, but then pause. You glance at your client, at the cameras, at the courthouse behind you, that marble monument to selective justice. And something in you shifts. Actually, you say, stepping closer to the microphones. One comment. The crowd hushes. You look straight ahead. The justice system isn't broken, you say slowly. It's working exactly as it was designed, to protect the powerful and exhaust the rest of us. But every time someone tells the truth, it bends. Just a little. For a second, no one moves. Then applause breaks through the drizzle. You walk away quietly. Later that afternoon, your phone buzzes. Holloway again. Kid, his voice gruff, you made national news. They're calling you the Blade in Heels. You groan, laughing. Oh, Lord, sounds like a bad movie title. You earned it. You didn't just win a case, you cracked a pattern. You know what he means. Because deep down, it's never about one crooked cop or one falsified tape. It's about how often truth gets buried under the weight of procedure and how few people are willing to dig. That evening, you visit your mother's grave again. Same small headstone, same quiet wind. You kneel down, brushing off a fallen leaf. Hey, Mom, you whisper. Told you I'd finish the fights you couldn't start. The sun dips low, painting the sky gold. Somewhere in the distance, church bells ring, not for victory, but for grace. You close your eyes and think about all the faces like yours, who never got their chance to stand in front of a judge, who never had the microphone or the proof or the time. People still argue whether the law is about justice or order. You've learned it's about endurance. Who can outlast the silence long enough for truth to be heard? Your phone pings again. A new email from an unfamiliar address. Internal Affairs Division. Subject: Confidential, Officer Blake investigation. You open it. Inside is a single line. We'd like you to testify in the inquiry. You smile faintly. Full circle, you whisper. As you walk back to your car, streetlights blink on one by one, like little witnesses waking up. You take a deep breath of the evening air. The scent of rain. Asphalt and something else. Vindication. Tomorrow, you'll face another room, another table, another line of men who think power means never being questioned. But tonight, you allow yourself one rare thing: stillness. You lean against your car, close your eyes, and let the city hum around you like a lullaby that finally learned your name because the storm didn't just break the system. It cleared the air, and for the first time in a long time, justice smells like rain. The next morning dawns clear. A rare, cloudless sky over a city that usually wakes up tired. The courthouse, once the stage of humiliation and defiance, now feels like a monument reclaimed. You stand on the courthouse steps again, alone this time. No reporters, no applause. Just silence, sunlight, and the faint scent of wet stone after rain. For the first time in months, you feel the quiet, not the heavy, haunted kind that follows injustice, but the sacred stillness that comes after something sacred has shifted. Your phone buzzes. A message from Holloway. Don't forget, the first victory isn't the end. It's the beginning of your witness. You smile, rereading it twice. Beginning of your witness. The phrase lingers. It's not about fame or fear. It's about stewardship. What you do once the world starts listening. You head toward your car, briefcase swinging lightly at your side. As you cross the street, a woman stops you. Middle-aged, worn uniform, tired eyes. You're that lawyer, right? From the trial? You nod. She exhales shakily. My son's case? Same precinct. They said he resisted, but the video's gone. I don't have money for a big attorney. You look at her for a long moment. The same fear you've seen 100 times. The quiet plea of someone who's already rehearsed losing. Come by my office tomorrow, you say softly. We'll start there. Her eyes widen. You'd really help? You smile. Justice isn't a luxury. It's rent. And we've all been paying late. As she walks away, relief already softening her shoulders, you realize the moral spine of it all. Justice doesn't end in verdicts. It begins in echoes, in the way one truth gives permission for another to be spoken. Later that day, you meet Holloway at a small diner on 125th Street. The coffee's burnt, the vinyl seat's cracked, but the stories told here could fill volumes. He's already there reading the paper. Your photo's on the front page beneath the headline, Defense Lawyer Exposes Systemic Corruption, Case Dismissed. You made front page, he says without looking up. You slide into the booth. Front pages burn faster than case files, he chuckles. And yet they light the way for the next one. You sip your coffee. Blake's under investigation. Internal Affairs asked me to testify. Good, he says. Let him learn what a real cross-exam feels like. There's a pause, not awkward, but full. You ever regret it? You ask quietly. Fighting a system that keeps finding new ways to regenerate? Holloway looks at you over his glasses. You think the point is to win? No, the point is to witness. He leans in. Every time you drag a lie into daylight, you make it easier for the next person to tell the truth. That's justice. Not perfect, just persistent. You sit back, absorbing it. Persistent justice. You like that. It sounds like something your mother would have stitched into the lining of her coat. When you leave the diner, the streets are alive again. Buses groaning, children laughing, vendors shouting. Ordinary chaos. Beautiful proof that the world keeps turning, even after everything. You glance back at the courthouse in the distance. It's smaller now somehow. Less like a fortress, more like a stage that's been emptied for the next act. As you walk toward your car, you think of all the voices that were never recorded, all the truths that were trimmed from the footage of history. Then you think of one that wasn't. Yours. You whisper to the air. Not for the cameras. Not for the crowds, but for the record only the universe keeps. Justice isn't blind. She's just tired of pretending she can't see. A breeze lifts your coat as if to agree. The sunlight hits your face. Somewhere far off, a siren wails, the city's eternal heartbeat. You open your car door, toss your briefcase in, and drive into the brightness. Not a hero, not a savior. Just a woman with a truth sharper than fear. And in that, there's something sacred. Something cinematic, eternal. Because sometimes the most powerful revolution doesn't roar. It cross-examines. If this story reminded you that truth doesn't need power, it just needs proof. Smash that subscribe button and hit the notification bell. Have you ever seen someone underestimated because of how they look, talk, or come from? Tell us your story in the comments below. Your experience might inspire our next viral tale of courage and justice. And here's a little challenge for the sharp-eyed viewers. There's a tiny moment around minute 6:42 when Victoria glances at the missing bodycam file. That quietly reveals her real plan before anyone else catches on. Watch again and tell us what detail you spotted. Only the most observant viewers will notice what she does with her hand right then, because in this courtroom, every detail is evidence.